Hi, I'm Elijah. I'm the host of the Despite System, and we are on a mission to destigmatize dissociative identity disorder. For those who are completely unfamiliar, DID is a complex dissociative disorder formed in childhood as a result of repeated trauma, particularly in children that possess a predisposition to high levels of dissociation and have a disorganized attachment to their primary caregiver. According to the theory of structural dissociation, which is essentially the foundational theory for everything we know about DID, young children don't really have a singular cohesive personality in the traditional sense. Instead, they have what we refer to as ego states, which essentially represent a child's basic needs. Things like hunger, temperature regulation, desire for care, desire to explore their environment, etc. In healthy childhood development, between the ages of roughly 6 to 9 years old, these ego states will integrate to become the singular personality that the child will have for the rest of their life. However, repeated childhood trauma can disrupt this process and prevent the ego states from integrating, thus creating multiple states of identity and consciousness. What this means is that the initial development of dissociative identity disorder isn't so much a split in the way that popular media representations would have you believe, rather that these ego states were never allowed to integrate in the first place. We suspect this is why the disorder was renamed in the 1990s from multiple personality disorder to dissociative identity disorder to more accurately reflect the function and formation of DID. For all intents and purposes, DID is having multiple states of identity and consciousness, so multiple people, as it were, in one brain. That's why you'll often hear me using words like we and us, because although I, Elijah, am the one speaking to you, I share a brain and a body with multiple different people. So when I say we, I'm talking about us collectively. And I know some folks are going to hear this and immediately become skeptical, and hey, listen, I understand. That's completely fine. However, I can assure you that there is a wealth of medical and scientific research that backs up the existence of dissociative identity disorder. There are millions of people worldwide who are diagnosed with it, us included, and it is included in the DSM-5, which is the manual that doctors use to diagnose patients. It is very real, very much a thing, as outlandish and wild as it may seem. That being said, the purpose of this video is less to educate about what DID is and more to give some advice to newly diagnosed or newly suspecting systems. I'm sure it goes without saying that DID is a highly stigmatized, heavily misunderstood, and misrepresented condition. So being diagnosed with it can be overwhelming, to say the least. Partially because of other people's perceptions of the condition, and also because it's just a really difficult and complex condition to live with. It's hard enough being one person, let alone trying to manage multiple who happen to share a body and a brain with you. And this is especially challenging if you are unfamiliar with how systems can manage their symptoms. But there is some good news in all of this, and the good news is that if you have DID, you've pretty much always had DID, which means that this is not necessarily a new experience to you. The only difference is that now you have the language to articulate your experiences and a framework that will hopefully help you moving forward. So with that being said, these are our top 4 most basic tips for newly diagnosed or newly suspecting systems to have a sort of jumping off point in terms of where to go from here. Tip number 1 is to find a good therapist if therapy is available to you. And also assuming that you don't already have a therapist that you're working with, which is a separate thing. If you are looking for a new therapist or finding a therapist for the first time and you are suspecting that you have DID, we really recommend looking for someone that specializes in dissociative disorders. Because DID is such a heavily misunderstood and misrepresented condition, there's obviously a lot of misinformation out there about it. And unfortunately, some professionals are not immune to that misinformation. We have personally encountered a couple of psychologists who operated on very outdated and incorrect information, and seeing them hindered our progress significantly. So in an effort to hopefully help you avoid that difficulty, we really recommend looking for someone that specializes in dissociative disorders from the jump. This is not to say that your therapist needs to be an expert by any means, just that they have some experience treating people with DID, or at the very least, they are willing to work with your system and not against it. We have heard some horror stories of therapists who only want to talk to the host or who discourage switching and internal communication, and these are red flags, so be aware of that when you're looking for a new therapist and the way that they talk about engaging with your system. On that note, it may also be super helpful to find someone who specializes in trauma-informed care as well. Dealing with DID most of the time means you're also dealing with complex post-traumatic stress, which means that trauma recovery is a huge part of the healing process. Finding a good therapist to help you navigate that process can definitely improve your quality of life, as it'll hopefully help you address some of the PTSD symptoms, and it can also help you connect a little better with your system. Now, we completely understand that therapy is not accessible to everyone, so if you are someone that cannot get a therapist right now, don't worry, that does not mean that you can't heal and make progress. It just means that we're going to have to put in a little bit more effort to get access to the resources that we need. Which brings me to our second tip. Do lots of research. It got dark in the room all of a sudden, sorry. First and foremost, we really recommend writing down a list of questions that you have before sitting down to do research. That way you can hopefully avoid getting super overwhelmed and feeling like you're being inundated with big giant walls of text. It helps to have some direction in terms of what it is exactly you're looking for in this moment and what would be the most helpful for you in this moment. Once you've taken some notes and get a gist of what you're looking for, there is a wealth of research available online to help you orient yourself within DID terminology and sort of figure out the ins and outs of this condition. Right off the bat, one of our favorite resources to recommend to people is actually the CTAD clinic on YouTube, hosted by Dr. Mike Lloyd, who himself specializes in treating dissociative disorders. There are also resources available about the theory of structural dissociation, tools you can use to help with your PTSD symptoms, and general mental wellness guides that cover a wide array of issues that you might face. Beyond academic and professional resources, we also recommend seeking out support groups if that's something that you're comfortable doing. There are many digital communities online where systems ask each other for advice and commiserate similar experiences and celebrate each other's wins. So if you think being in online community, specifically with other systems, could be helpful to you on your journey, then it may be worth a shot to reach out and seek that support. Tip number 3 is work on improving system communication. This is a big one. Over on TikTok, one of our most frequently asked questions is how to improve system communication in the day-to-day. And the truth is, and this is not the answer that most people are looking for, but the truth is, there really is not a one-size-fits-all solution. What works for one system may not work for yours, and what's important is finding methods of communication that are both accessible and comfortable for you and everyone in your system. It's been several months. We started filming this video months ago and then just forgot about it. That's why our hair is longer. Our plant is still alive, mostly, and I still haven't finished this book, so we're making great progress. Anyway, to continue where we left off, we were talking about making communication accessible for you and your system. And personally, we have found that one of the best ways for us to do that is by writing everything down. When I say everything, I mean everything, because I can hear you now. Eli, what do you mean when you say write everything down? What am I supposed to write down? Everything. Symptoms, experiences that you're having, conversations that you're having with different alters in your system, concerns that anybody has, any experience that you think might be worth noting regarding your system and improving communication. It doesn't matter how big or how small, how random it seems, write everything down. We use our journal pretty religiously to do this. We also leave sticky notes for each other everywhere because it helps us tremendously with combating the effects of time loss and amnesia. Mind you though, this is about accessibility and what feels right for your system. So if writing feels super tedious and is not something that you're a big fan of, you don't have to use writing. You can also do things like leave video messages for each other or voice messages on your phone. Basically just finding ways to physically leave messages for each other or for yourself can help tremendously when it comes to the memory loss and time gaps. On that note, though, keep in mind that your headmates are individuals like you, which means that they may not be the most accommodating or welcoming at first. If you find that other alters in your system are super resistant to communication or cooperating as a team, know that that is very normal and that there's nothing wrong with you. It just means that it may take some extra time to form and establish those system relationships. Also know that communication is not static either. Some days you might have stellar communication, and other days it might feel like pulling teeth. Ebbs and flows in communication are also very, very normal, and there's nothing wrong with you if your system can't always get it right, whatever that means to you. Improving communication is a process. It's going to take a lot of time and effort and a whole lot of patience, and it's okay if your journey looks different than other systems. And this leads us to our fourth and final tip. You can have hope. If you've been diagnosed with DID, chances are you have already been through a lot of really painful things, and this diagnosis might just feel like one more ordeal you have to cope with. It is okay if it takes you time to process this diagnosis. It's okay if you need time to grieve what your life could have been, who you could have been, had you not experienced so much trauma. DID is a deeply complex and often incredibly painful condition to live with, but it is not a death sentence. DID systems are fully capable of living happy, healthy, and super fulfilling lives, and you are too, especially now that you've discovered the truth about your system. Now you have the information you need to move forward with clarity and work with your system as a unit. Things may seem really scary and confusing right now, and there will continue to be moments like that. But know that you and your system don't have to just survive for the rest of your life anymore. You can learn to thrive, too, and despite your painful past, build a better, brighter, more beautiful future. We believe in you, and we hope one day you can learn to believe in you, too. Also, this is a spoon. It's not a butt plug.